Well, here we are,
Hello, everyone.
relatively safe and sound, and it is Tuesday, February 4th. We don't usually mention the date here on Totally Classic
No, this one's relevant though.
because sometimes we say these are hot takes served cold. Counterpart Brendan thought of that. Um, I being Andy Swindler,
And I, being Brendan McNamara.
and we are here on Totally Classic to talk about the things people don't seem to like to talk about, or if they do pretend to talk about them on platforms like social media, they're not really talking about them. They're just sort of, you know, standing on one shore, like with a little, I'm thinking it's like a spitwad shooter of like
Oh
links
yeah.
they probably never read.
Yes. Yeah.
And I say that with only modest disdain because I have certainly been guilty of such things. Brendan is somebody who actually reads lots of things, including studies. I am probably much more of the typical internet user, although I'm trying to reform myself to do more research, to go deeper, to ask the hard questions, and not settle for uh, something less than true. So that's what we're about here. What does it mean to get to the bottom of the truth? So today the question is, should the US let everyone in?
Hmm. Should the US let everyone in? And I'm going to let me just pre-answer is that my pre-bias before this conversation is the answer is no. I'm already eager because this is not something I'm wildly versed in to explore what vantage I may have and how it may be properly or improperly aligned.
And just for the sake of keeping things saucy, I'm going to pre-answer with yes, we should.
Yeah, look at us. See, we're opposed, guys. I hate immigrants. I love immigrants. Oh no, I hate you. I love you. Wait, we're so confused already.
I sent one of our old college friends our Christmas episode, and I said, "This is, probably one of our more sort of palatable exercises." And he's like, "No, I want you like tearing each other's throats out. What are you talking about?"
Oh no. Sorry to let you all down. There's very little throat tearing. Maybe we can set an episode aside at some point. We're like, hey, let's just do one and let's try to destroy each other. See how that goes. We haven't yeah.
Destroy.
Yeah, we haven't tried that
So we are now 2 full weeks into Trump's second term as president. He was
yet.
inaugurated January 20th, 2 weeks from yesterday.
Mm.
And it's been a flurry of activity. I don't think anybody could deny that. Or, as we were talking a little bit in the pregame, maybe just more outspoken activity.
Yeah.
Where we
Yeah.
will dig into is like, how are some of the things Trump's doing actually that different from other presidents, or is it just that he's much more transparent about it?
Yeah.
Um, but today's issue is about immigration,
Yeah.
and I wanted to start that by looking at a timeline from
Hmm.
Forbes.
Oh,
Just a
nice.
couple dates stand out. One, January 26th, about a week ago, ICE said it enhanced targeted operations in Chicago in
Hmm.
partnership with the FBI and other federal agencies, while immigration enforcement actions were also reported in Atlanta, Puerto Rico, Colorado, Los Angeles, and Austin, Texas, according to CNN. Puerto Rico stood out to me as an interesting one there because that's a whole.
Yes.
We could probably do a whole separate episode about Puerto Rico and just because it's not a state, it's like it's kind of in limbo. So I'm like, why are they anyway?
I know. I thought my uninformed consideration of Puerto Rico was that they had kind of a particular, almost like a favored nations access to the United States of America, being sort of a territory with which we have a generally mutually, or well, I wouldn't say mutually supportive, but a supportive relationship.
Kind of like Canada.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, and I being in Chicago, or just on the outskirts, that always stands out to me. Chicago in the past has been a sanctuary city, super blue state. Well, I shouldn't say that actually. It's pretty red when you go south, but Chicago, as a lot of big metro area states, the
Yes.
University kind of
Yeah,
overshadows the rest of the state.
that's for sure. Yeah.
Um, and then the next day, January 27th, Immigration and Customs Enforcement said it arrested 1,179 people on Monday, the largest
Hmm.
figure since Trump took office, compared with 308 arrests on Trump's first full day in office and 282 arrests per day in September before Trump took over. I'm not, September seems like a while ago, but maybe that's just the most recent.
It does seem like a long time ago for
Um,
some reason. January 1st seems a long time ago.
yeah, no kidding. Every day seems like a long time. And then and
Yeah.
then and then yesterday was a quote a day without immigrants.
Yeah.
This was a nationwide protest where businesses were shut down, people skipped school, all sorts of stuff to protest these immigration policies.
Yeah. Which is fascinating to me in that there seems to be a lot of confusion in terms of public discourse in regards to who is being targeted here. The category immigrants is disingenuous. That would be like, for example, if the FBI, the CIA went after, let's say, white supremacist, domestic terror cells, and they were like, "Hey, why are you going after white men?" Be like, "Well, it's not accurate here, really." Um, and I would like to speak as someone who is a centrist, but I try to consume more right-wing media than I have in the past. In the past 4 years, I've tried to consume more right-wing media than I have in the previous 30 some odd years that I've been consuming this sort of media. And I've noticed that this sort of, not quite a straw man, but an inappropriate expansion of the Venn diagram occurs. Whereas, as I've seen, folks on the right are very pro-immigrant, just like people on the left, I would say, are very pro-immigrant. I would say people on the right have become, and I believe Trump is a key part of enhancing the not even I think even like full on like ire or fear of, which I don't really love in terms of the national rhetoric, political rhetoric, is very anti-illegal immigrant, meaning if you broke the law in any way, shape, or form to get in here, which some people consider a criminal act, you can be punished. Illegal entry is punished up to a year in jail, but the fine is actually relatively low. It's like a $500 fine or something like that. But it's not a major crime. Certain if to be in the United States illegally is actually a civil offense, which I just learned in the past couple of weeks. But to enter is a crime that would get you a year in jail. So it's at least pretty serious. Um, and anyway, that's what I've noticed. Whereas a lot of people be like, a day without immigrants because the right is coming after immigrants. And you're like, well, that's not accurate. It lacks specificity to such a broad degree in terms of like numbers of people we're talking about, as to be misleading. So I was a little bummed to see a lot of the day without immigrant thing just being general. And in some ways, it felt like a response to Trump. And in some ways, it felt like it had nothing to do with Trump. And it's actually maybe just a general thing of like caution and done out of fear and wanting people to just understand that immigrants, like they say in Hamilton, get the job done. Because I think universally across the spectrum, Republicans, Democrats, everyone loves a flipping immigrant, loves an immigrant story. Whatever the vice president is married. I don't even know that for sure where she's from. She might even be Canadian for all I know. I'm married to an immigrant, so maybe I just immediately projected it on his marriage. Donald Trump is married to an immigrant. So there's love, love these people, love them. Who doesn't love an immigrant? I mean, if you don't have an immigrant somewhere in your circle, you certainly have somebody who immigrated here. Their family immigrated here not too many generations ago. So go
Yeah,
hug an immigrant.
that's
Go
pretty
hug an
much
immigrant.
that's pretty much
Yeah,
guaranteed.
it really is. Yeah, and even before that, pretty much everyone who's here, reportedly came over on the Bering Strait 24,000 years ago. So we're all immigrants. Everyone here came here from somewhere else. So you know what? The good thing I love about the Day Without Immigrants, because there was a movie that did that too. But I don't know if it came from the movie or the movie came from the previous movement. The movie came out almost 20 years ago, I think. But I love that. Like we should be aware. Like there are people who come over here and I'm going to swear, hustle their asses off just to kind of like make a life in a new place. And I don't know if I moved a lot in the United States. I've never moved out of the country where I didn't speak the language. That's very, I can empathize in an imaginary way with that. And it's very intimidating. That's a major upheaval of life. And so I just want to say this as like a centrist. And as far as I can tell, very few people reject this at all. Everyone loves immigrants as a broad category.
Yeah,
With an asterisk, of course, there are people out there who hate immigrants.
always an asterisk. But
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
the nuance. Yeah, it's like on Pee-wee's Playhouse. The big.
Yes, I remember. Yeah, when you say if you say the word of the day, everyone has to scream.
Yeah, I think that's true. Gosh, we could look at how many movies have been made about, immigrant stories. I was
Yeah.
curious, since you're married to somebody who immigrated here, if this had any, personal effect in that way. Um,
The thing to me, I experienced the fear element to some degree when you start hearing or reading reports that's like, oh, this new administration is hostile towards immigrants. I have an immigrant wife. She recently became a citizen, so maybe it's like, oh, she's safe now. But she was not a citizen during Trump's first term, and the same fears were raised. So just like with the COVID panic, I'm immune compromised, so I was like, I better check this out. Wait, is this a real danger? Like, do I need to be concerned? Or are there things we need to shore this up? Should I hustle her citizenship up? Should we try to like make that happen? Like, what do I do to like stave off issues? And in doing so, there is there was no there's no concern. And actually, specifically, like everyone's favorite potshot target, Elon Musk. Is like radically into H-1B visas, which is how my wife got to stay in this country. Um, so yeah, support for legal immigration from folks who want to come here and contribute to the great American society. I mean, that's like everyone's jam. I feel like every year at the Oscars, there's at least one. At the Brutalist this year is obviously kind of a rough immigrant story, but it's inspirational. We love those things. I think it's part of the story that we tell ourselves as Americans, is that we all came here from someone else. We added the hyphen slash American, and then here we are. Like you come to this culture. I think the bipartisan push has always been assimilate, and I think that's changed maybe in the last 10 years or so. I feel like there's an anti-assimilationist push that's kind of changing the dynamic a little bit. But yeah, you come here and show yourself to be trustworthy, and then kind of you're in. Cool. Because we went through the same process as well. Like we came, eventually we were hated for a while, and then trust. I mean, like every people group who came here, trusted, hated, trusted, and now you're in. And then,
and you're
God,
Irish, so you know better than anybody.
yeah, that's yeah. My cultural history certainly loves to identify with that story as well. Of the Irish need not apply, and being brought here as slaves, that sort of thing.
So what you're describing with that immigrant story is it sounds quite meritorious, which would seem to align with the pushback on DEI and all of that. Uh, and I agree, and that I've heard stories of people traveling, I don't know, 3,500 miles to get here. I mean, just
Yeah,
unthinkable, unimaginable, really. And I, yes, I think we're both admitting we can't truly relate. And yet, I don't know, just traveling in even a European country where there's a different language spoken
yeah,
is so disorienting, and that's why one of the
yeah,
reasons I like to travel, because I actually like to be put out of my comfort zone and sort of try to sort things out. But that's a vacation, right?
yeah, yeah. You can escape. You can escape.
Although part of that is funny because like part of that I'm remembering it would be so different now. I haven't gone to Europe in a while, but that was pre-smartphones. That was pre,
Uh,
having like
oh yeah,
and
that's a
that's
game
only going
changer.
to be we're going to have the Babelfish and the universal translator and all the sci-fi stuff. I mean, in our lifetimes,
Oh, for sure.
pretty much already here. Uh, so well, that's a whole other intersection we won't have time for. It's like, is AI going to replace all the immigrants, laborers that we're sending out? Um,
Right? Horrifying.
so yeah, I'm with that. In terms of welcoming in anybody who goes through the system, and I'm not knowledgeable enough, honestly, to evaluate the system. I'm sure it's inefficient, and I'm sure there's challenges, and I'm sure they ask weird questions, and yet there is a path in one way or another. I do have a
Yes.
friend. If we ever get around to having guests, I do have a friend who's actually an immigration lawyer, and
Oh yeah.
I actually this was related to Palestine because I have a friend in the West Bank who has never been able to leave. He's never been able to get a visa. He is
Yeah.
very shortly is able to. He's going to go to Turkey and sort of start just developing like a visa history. So then maybe he can come to the U.S. someday.
Oh,
Um,
interesting. Yeah.
but as a related concept, I had a conversation with my friend who's an immigration attorney, and he just said that I don't know. I maybe want to use this term system pretty loosely because the U.S., the Department of State, pretty much just does whatever they want when it comes to at least that
Mhm.
kind of immigration and whether or not
Yeah.
you have a visa, or whether or not they have to really validate the reasons for it. So yes, there's clearly a path because people do get citizenship, and it seems rather arduous.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's millions a year that come in, and I don't. I know some people are in favor of like, oh, can we shrink those numbers? Um, I mean, to me, that seems like not the tip of the spear that anyone should be focusing on. If Trump had, for example, like run on limiting the number of legal immigrants, I think he would have been a far less popular candidate. But if you can just be like, hey, I'm saying the same thing that Obama said, the same thing that Hillary Clinton said, which is like, if you came here criminally, you're getting out of here. We're getting you out. So I mean, that's essentially what he ran on. I think that thing that he focused on, because I know this is kind of next, I'll kind of sort of transition into it. Um, he tends to focus on anecdotal information, which I don't find favorable. Politicians
Mm.
do it all the time. They love it. I don't think I've ever seen a politician in my life who hasn't at some point gotten up on a stage and been like, I was just speaking to someone in the back here, Jane, Jane Hopkins. And Jane Hopkins is a second generation potato farmer. And she's been telling me this fracking stuff is just devastating their well water. There's always some personal anecdote. I
Oh,
don't
I'd be a
care.
great politician. I love that.
Yeah, yeah, and people do. Again, I this is maybe I might be gendering it, but it's to me it always seems like, and again, when I've just brought this up in groups, and I'm a pretty femme dude, but like it seems to appeal more to women than men. That men like ideas and things and stuff, and then women like stories. I love flipping stories. I like fictional stories more than real stories, though. I'm not as interested in real and like nonfiction. But Trump has done that heavily, where he focuses on, hey, this legal immigrant broke into the country, criminal, which we already knew, criminal because they broke in, already a criminal, then committed all these other crimes. And then essentially that sort of builds up this idea of like, we don't know who's coming in. They could be dangerous, which is true. It's factually accurate. We really don't know who's coming in if they're coming in not through any like recorded portal. And yes, they sometimes are dangerous, but that's really just because people are dangerous. And I know people have spoken about the prevalence of like military age Chinese men coming in to a degree that people are like, we don't really get this. And they couldn't be claiming refugee status unless are they Uyghur? If they're not Uyghur, then why are they even coming here? There's a lot of that sort of like, there's greater alarmism that we can just pay attention to. I don't think we should be afraid of. But I don't like that. And this is the problem with anecdotal information is like if you share positive stories, oh, then it really helps your spin, but it doesn't. It's one person's story. You can share the Lake and Riley thing where an illegal immigrant, like raped and murdered this woman. You're like, that's terrible. What we know is that illegal immigrants don't commit crime on a per capita basis at any greater rate than the general population. We know that immigrants as a broad category, the full category, not just the illegal, not the ones that broke the law to come here, but the ones who came here legally, they commit crimes at a rate lower than the like native born population. So anecdotal information can be true, meaning every person who came here illegally, who we didn't stop, who then committed a crime, that crime, specific crime, would not have been committed. Like Lincoln Riley would most likely not be dead right now. So yes, in that sense, okay, sure, it's sort of relevant, and obviously immensely relevant to the family. I don't mean to diminish that, like her life wasn't worth something. That's not what I mean at all. What I mean is when politicians weaponize individual things to say, "Oh, see what's happening. Oh, see." That's not. I don't. I think it riles people up because it puts a real face on something, but I don't think it's helpful in actually fostering like a cohesive understanding. So I've just not appreciated that approach because I don't think it's very helpful.
Yeah. So first time around, Trump's first term 8 years ago, he was all about the wall. And
Yes.
I don't even remember. Did he campaign on that? Was that a thing, or did that
Yeah.
come?
Oh, yeah. No, 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 he did. No, 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 he definitely did. I mean, I don't know the dominant percentage to which, like, what percentage of words that he said on stage were about said wall, but it certainly was reported as though it was probably 20%, of his platform. I don't know the actual percentage of what it really represents, but I mean, I heard the chants, build the wall, and people were psyched about it. And he was like, it's going to be a beautiful wall, like whatever, he certainly said those things.
Yeah, so this has been a consistent topic for him. It's just the
Yeah.
the means have shifted because I haven't heard a single mention of the wall. I don't listen to Trump that much, but has he? Are we still building it? Did he even talk about the wall?
Biden kept building the wall. Biden overturned, I think it was, I want to say 26. Y'all can fact check me. Uh, he overrode 26 like constitutionally based restrictions and regulations in order to continue building the wall. So as Biden did throughout his tenure, he just pissed on the Constitution on a regular basis. So he did that while continuing to build the wall. I think one of the reasons Trump stopped talking about it is because his first tenure it did not go well. He said Mexico was going to pay for it. He was going to build a beautiful wall. You wouldn't believe how much will get done. He got some of it done, but Biden, I don't know if Biden actually ended up building more of it, but he certainly kept building it. And so it was like, it wasn't anything that he could really attack on because it wasn't even through Biden's tenure, the Democrats really weren't opposed to the wall anymore. They basically were on board. Trump kind of won the wall conversation where it was like, okay, yes, building a wall is a good idea. So he didn't really this time because it just kind of didn't. I mean, I'm shocked he didn't gloat about it more personally, based on kind of what um, whatever an amateur diagnosed narcissist he is.
Yeah. Well, that's a good segue into really what was or was not different between Trump and Biden. Um, Very high level. I saw at least one headline
Yeah.
that maybe you have deeper information that Biden actually deported more people than Trump during his first term. But let's say,
Hmm.
okay, yeah, that'd be Biden, the last 4 years of Biden compared to the first 4 years of Trump.
Yeah, well, and I think that was in the thing that you sent. This is a New York Times article, why deportations were higher under Biden than in Trump's first term. Already, since New York Times is a left biased publication, that's a hilarious headline because it already sounds like okay, but it was different because I read a bunch of articles like that about Obama because Obama deported more people than anyone in U.S. history. Um, and I don't remember people crying about it or protesting on the streets quite as much. Maybe they were. Maybe I was just paying less attention. I could be wrong. Biden deported most of those people in like a 2 year span, or not even like a 1 year span. So the rate of deportation was almost double that of most of Trump's presidency, just based on that, if that article is accurate. What's also relevant is Biden also put in place impositions that were previously not in place for legal immigrants, where legal immigrants had to be vaccinated with COVID vaccines, even if they had prior immunity. So it's not you can't say it was a protective effect. It's not a public health measure. It isn't. In those cases, it certainly is not. Also, it's an imposition on bodily autonomy, informed consent, the Nuremberg trials. I mean, like it's a heinous ethical action. And also during that, most of which the quote unquote COVID emergency, basically when the U.S. government called it an emergency and eventually they withdrew the emergency status, using that as a metric. Deportations were way down across that entire time. But that's also because like immigration was significantly stifled, um, like by on purpose, and also because countries around the world were restricting uh, immigration and emigration and travel, and so on and so forth.
Mhm.
So that to me has been the weird thing. I guess that Trump basically saying like I'm going to deport all of them. I think that's maybe the only novel thing that he's pushing. But deporting illegal immigrants is something that every president of my lifetime, and there's video evidence of this running all around the algorithm right now, has been in favor of. Is that if you broke the law to come in here, you've got to go back and start over. It's like cutting in line at oh gosh, what's the name of that bakery? Uh, Katsuni. What is it? It's like a Filipino-ish bakery in Chicago. I tried to go when I
Oh,
was there. And there's a line that goes out and like down the street, like in
yeah.
front of like 8 houses. That one. It's like a line at that bakery. If you come in and jump that line, even if you pretend you're like, oh, but I know this guy. I guarantee
Unless
you, in Chicago, if someone's feeling in a mood, they'd be like, no, not only can you not be here, you're going to the back of the line. And you've been here talking to your friends for 10 minutes. No, you're going to the back of the line. You're actually now 15 people behind. It's a very normal thing. I just think, and it's a very normal thing of how like regular people view quote unquote fairness. You can,
unless unless you're a Filipino immigrant.
yeah, exactly. And you're like, oh, do you work here? Yeah. This is the only time
Oh,
you can get your babinka.
well, you brought up something, and I think this is actually a Trump quote that he's promising it to be the largest deportation operation. That's the part that's in quotes in
Yeah.
U.S. history. Um,
He's still trying to beat Obama, man.
so so that's it, right? So he's a blowhard, we know that, but it's
Yes.
yeah, he's just like it's gonna be the best deportation, you know.
It's impeccable. It's gonna be great.
Um, and so yeah, we were speculating, why is it, that people are so much more attentive when Trump does things that are really quite similar. It may be worse. I think he's promising it will be worse. And yet so far, and especially when you compare Biden and Trump's, pre-existing terms, uh, the best thing we could come up with was just good old-fashioned confirmation bias. It's like, well, I've decided that
Yes.
Trump is
Yeah.
awful in every way. So when he does it, I'm going to pay more attention.
Yeah. It is. It is fascinating. Well, and I think I didn't know until today that one of the reasons Obama was called the deporter in chief is because they altered the definition of what qualifies as a deportation during his predecessor, George W. Bush's tenure. Meaning, formerly, if anyone had been caught trying to cross, and was in any way processed and ejected, that was sort of like a prevented border crossing previously. Then during George W. Bush, it was changed to, and they would actually have a more comprehensive data collection from those people they were turning back, and those were counted as official deportations. So really, since George W. Bush and all through Obama and everybody else since, uh, all sort of, even if you're turning someone back at a border and getting their fingerprints and all that stuff, so they're registered as having attempted this crime, then that counts as a deportation. So some of our numbers are up pretty high that way. Also, let's be fair in context to Biden in that he did seem to enact policies that seemed to encourage illegal immigration because the illegal immigration crossings were record highs. So then he had more people whom were due to be deported, legally speaking. So again, this is always like I think this again. I don't view this as a nuance. Even this is just like this is base level context on what we're talking. Like this is what we're discussing. But yes, I do not understand or actually, I do understand, and I think a significant percentage of the present day umbrage is about political motivation, political bias, and it's actually not about immigrants. So I don't really buy the like empathic whatever. Everyone made fun of Selena Gomez for crying. I did not make fun of her. I think she was having a real experience. Actors in general I know plenty of them. I am one. We have a lot of emotions at our surface. And if she was made aware of something that made her in emotional agony, I think she was crying about a real thing. And I don't think that needs to be made fun of. However, a lot of people were correct in being like, well, wait a second. Like you were on posting on social media during Obama's presidency, and he was deporting more of your people then. So why are you crying now? It does seem to be angled performatively, but I think a lot of that speaks to the bias of news media kind of pushing a narrative that seeks to villainize the right more than it seeks to villainize the left. So then we have this sense as a populace that the right is more villainous than the left, when I actually think there's a pretty solid case that at least the past like 4 to 5 years, the left has been far more villainous than the right, funnily enough. And both of them are people we should be watching closely and keeping accountable. Like I don't think you throw any. I don't know if the Republicans get like 1% more trust. I think that's about it. But other than that, it's you pretty much like hold on to your wallet and hold on to your boots. Um, anyway, that's what I think. Anyway, that a lot of people are responding to narrative more than they're responding to reality.
Yeah, well, that takes me to a brief loop back. Earlier, you were talking about your wife recently becoming a citizen, and you mentioned that
Yeah.
you do, I think you said fear, or you at least pay attention when you see headlines about mass
Yep.
deportations and previously in the pandemic, anything that might affect your health. But your reaction seems a little a little different than the average person, in my opinion, uh,
Mm.
which is that it seems like when you notice something and have
Yeah.
fear, you're encouraged to dig into it and do research.
Yeah. I just don't want to experience any. I don't like fear. I don't enjoy it that much. Um, and so for me, I was like, I don't ever want to feel it if I don't need to feel it. Like if it's not approaching uh, useful. Same thing for anger to me. I mean, I hate to disparage those emotions a little bit, but I do want to back burner them a little bit in my life. I don't know if that's healthy or unhealthy, but that's just where I'm at. And so for me, I don't want to be angry about something if it's not credible. You know, if someone's kind of telling me mad about something, I'm like, well, hold on, let's see if that's real. If someone's telling me to be afraid of something, hold on a second, let's see if that's real. I don't really want to, as much as those emotions are fun and they feel exciting, like I don't need more of those in my life. Maybe that's like an emotional sloth or something. I don't know, but I was like, I don't really want to hang out in those places too long. To me, they're like those are activating emotions. Those are emotions to deal with problems ultimately. You know what I mean? Which may be internal, like an internal issue or an external issue. But either way, you've got to be like, oh, okay, what's if I'm responding out of fear or anger with my partner, I have to examine, well, is it something she's doing? And most often, is it something she's doing that's really poking something that's wounded inside me? So in both of those circumstances, like comprehensive examination is required if you're going to be a human being, like functioning properly, moving through the world in at least like a an examined and conscientious way. At least that's my attempt. I'm doing it, I'm doing it as, makeshift and DIY as I possibly can. But
As you do. No,
yeah,
it's beautifully said, and yeah, I agree with that. Those are it's not to say there are sort of quote unquote bad emotions, and I think denying them is not necessarily good. But I think
yes, yeah,
the two you named are not to be dwelled in for any longer than they need to tell us what they're telling us. Um, so thank you for that. Moving on
yeah,
generally, I'm curious. Uh, Moving on from maybe what specifically Trump is doing, what we think he's going to do, or even past presidents, but just the idea of immigration, uh,
yeah,
more abstractly.
yeah,
I'm somebody. This is where I get super social justicey and a
yeah,
bit, well, I don't know if it's probably not everybody's utopia, but to me, I think my God, we live in the United States. We have an unbelievable amount of land and resources and wealth, and uh, compared to other countries in terms of population density, we're actually quite, I don't know, low, maybe average in some
hmm
regards. So broadly, I'm like, oh my God, let's make room for everybody. Let's kumbaya. Let's all have a party. And uh,
yeah,
and at the same time, especially in the tech sector, I know a lot of my friends are out of work right now, and AI is disrupting everything. So, uh,
yeah. That's weird.
but I don't know, the last jobs I imagine AI will disrupt are the lower wage jobs that I think especially so-called illegal immigrants, often fill um, in restaurants and whatnot. So, and then teasing also kind of attached to that. I heard somebody speculate. I went backstage and I talked to Jan, and she said um,
Yes, yes,
uh, the Facebook version of that, just speculating that, oh well, because of that, because we're going to deport a bunch of restaurant workers,
yeah,
the and grocery store workers, the food and farmers, a lot of immigrants work on farms,
yeah,
but food prices will increase. So
yeah,
mixing together a few things there, but just
yeah.
putting it on the table, like I'm like basically let them in, let's have a party. Um, what do you think?
I would say the interesting part is we're stuck with because even the aspects of the like you're saying the sort of progressive point of view that I grok that I vibe with That was not meant as an endorsement. Grok has been around as a slang word long before Elon Musk grabbed it for his AI. But I'm sure as I said it now, it's now recording me through probably my either my my smart oven over there. That we have an issue here where in some ways you want to like help people who are beleaguered and uh, kind of ultimately in a caste sense, when you come into the country, especially if you come into the country in violation of the laws of that country, you are absolutely low caste in terms of how our society functions. But because of that, one of the then ethical issues that we face trying to like, okay, well, how do I help that person best? Sometimes I can help that person best by kicking them out of this country. That's an option. I can also, but one of the other ways we should help them best is that they're paid fairly. And one of the reasons that people who are here illegally are often able to be have all these jobs that make things cheaper is because they're being hired unethically and then paid unethically, meaning we've all decided this is like what the appropriate amount you should pay people. But a lot of times people hire illegal immigrants because they can pay them less. So they can actually be less ethical capitalists by doing this. So in some ways, like protecting, like maybe things aren't supposed to be as cheap as they are.
That's
I'm
Heartily agree with that. Especially,
yeah. Look at I mean, speaking of like a tech or whatever, you know what I mean? Like think of how cheap like our magic little hand computers are. Like there's a and that's because, slave labor is involved with mining some of the elements of that. And so if my phone has to double in price to be ethical, yeah, a lot of people will be like, F that and not buy it. They'll just buy it on Apple.com or Amazon, but they won't go stand in line. But plenty of people go stand in line to go get the ethical one. There'll be a long line because people will want to virtue signal. And I mean that both in the yes, some people will be doing it just to be like, look how great I am. And then other people be doing it because they're like, oh my gosh, finally. Like I carry this like guilt bomb in my hand that I look at for hours a day. Likewise with restaurants or whatever. Yes, the restaurants will suffer. There are restaurants who will go out of business if like Trump executed his plan entire. I don't think it'll be as many restaurants that went out of business when we did a lockdown of society for 6 months or so. So in some ways, if people didn't talk about that, then shut up about businesses closing down now, or all of a sudden, or at least go, hey, I'm new to this, and I realize this is actually a smaller crisis that we've had just even in the past 4 years. In the past, like, whatever, in the past two presidential runs. So we're stuck in a quagmire really here, which is how do we deal with it? And the thing I think is I have to take it down at least to the personal level, which is there are some times where I have parties and almost anyone could come in my house, but not everyone does. No one deserves to come in my house. Zero. Like completely closed borders, also ethically fine as an isolationist position. Um, I would contend there are some First Nations people who would be like, you know what, we should have had a no tolerance immigration policy. Maybe we'd still be running things. So we all can look at and see how people come in and change things. Right? If enough, we're seeing this in island nations. We're seeing this in Sweden, Denmark, Norway, which are the top three quality of life things. That's the first thing I did when you announced this topic. I went and looked up. I was like, okay, where's the best quality of life and what's their immigration situation?
mm,
So some of them, for example, like Danish, Denmark's the best. Everyone loves Denmark. They're 10% immigrants. That's total category, like overall large category. They are they have heavy controls on migration, culture training for the children of immigrants from age 1, controls on whether people can wear traditional religious clothing, and areas with high migrant populations being designated ghettos and being demolished. So they have an aggressive, like they have an aggressive like, hey, you can come in, but there's ways you got to behave. And
mm,
and in order to regulate what type of people are coming in your house, there's some degree of like a doorman policy that makes a lot of sense to me. Meaning, I'd have the same thing for my house, and depending on who's in my house, I would have a different policy about who could come in or not. There's some people I wouldn't. I was like, I don't know you, and I'm getting a weird vibe or whatever. I might just go off vibes because I don't have the time to do a background check, nor do I have the equipment. Even more so now that I have children in my house, if I have vulnerable people, because and you've seen this in Chicago, right? Black folks in Chicago have become more anti-illegal immigrant in the past 4 or 5 years than I've ever seen, like out loud, where they're like, and people in New York too, they're like, wait a second, Like we're a previously here population that really needs the help, and y'all busy letting those folks in and helping them when they literally broke the law to get here. So you're like, hold on, let's take care of our family first, like I would in my house. I would want my children taken care of and protected over a stranger. That doesn't mean I go out. I don't. When you cancel, when you kick out all that everybody and you shut down international aid, you start to get people in a scared place. I could go outside and be like, hey, you can't come in, but here's a piece of cake because I don't know you, dude. But here's a piece of cake. We're having a birthday party and you can hang outside, but I don't know you, man. And I feel like that's what everyone does with their homes. Occasionally you can practice radical invitational celebrating, and I think that is godly and beautiful, and that can be done, but that needs to be done intentionally, where you're like, I wouldn't necessarily do a radical invitation of people into my home with my kids not under supervision. Like I have people I'm responsible for. And so I feel like every nation is like that too. It's just an expanded version of it. I used to just think there should be no borders. We should all just wander. And I was like, well, but nothing functions properly that way. And in some ways, a nation is just too big of a system, I think, in a lot of ways. But even a tribe would be like, oh, you can come in, but you better act right. And you better start doing how we do. You can't keep your foreign ways. Um, or you've got to kind of go back to the nation that you came from. And I assume that would kind of function that tribally, nationally, or like within my home. But that's about, like I said, that's a balance. That's like, because I want to be welcoming to the stranger. It's important. It's vital. It's biblically mandated. But who is worthy of invitation? It's not that anyone deserves it. No one deserves access. They actually deserve lack of access in many ways because that's just not where they ended up, right? Just like I don't deserve access to their home. I'm like, well, if that's the colonialist impulse. It's like wherever I want to go is where I own. I can own it. It's mine now. I can live here. I deserve to be here. You're like, well, not necessarily. You should probably negotiate that with people who are already here.
Or I could easily slip into well, hey, none of us really own anything. We were tinkering with this on a text,
Yeah, yeah,
which I need to follow up with. But um, I can say that sort of really abstractly, but the minute somebody wanders into my house that I don't know and starts, using my daughter's bathroom, I'm going to be like, oh, wait a minute. Actually, I'm going to rethink that policy.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and it's so much of this, right? I mean, if it doesn't affect us, we're just not as connected. Maybe don't care as much. And on the other hand, we're not as maybe emotionally swayed. But I, again, abstractly, would label myself as anti-nationalist.
hmm
I think the idea of countries. I mean, I understand why we have them and how we got here, and I imagine a post-national civilization. Even that word civilization is probably not quite the right word. You know, grouping of humans.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
uh, Although it's also sort of post group in some ways, as well as post capitalism. And I don't know about that because I recognize at least that would require probably a rather significant amount of evolution of who we are and how we operate as people, which I think is a lot of our exploration.
yeah.
It's just, my God, we can't even seem to. What was the clickbait thing we were flipping back and forth the other day? It was just like, and your reaction was like, we can do better. Um, and but yeah, but maybe at least for now, we need smaller systems. To your point, we need, it's cool to have different cultures organized in different ways, and then be able to like
Yeah,
share and share, and like that's a really fun part of how we
yeah.
organize ourselves. Team mascots, we love rooting for the team,
We totally
um,
do.
and so I think one of my questions was like, and I think this came up on another episode, but do good fences make good neighbors? Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, I'm torn on that. I think most of me wants to answer yes, as I reach middle age and now have a family and all that, and it's like, okay, now I have more to lose and more to protect.
Yeah, yeah, it's different when you're doing it but and that's what nationalism is useful for, is giving people a sense of an expanded unit that is not infinite or seemingly infinite. Like it's hard enough understanding like what I share in common with over 300 million United States citizens. That's
Right.
so gigantic. Like the idea of like building like a one world nation, I was like, that would be the worst possible outcome. That would then just be like this monolith. So then we're not abandoning nations at all. We're just making like a
Well, then,
globalist future, you know?
but if you ever watch The Expanse, then it's Mars versus Earth.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah. You're like, we're going to find units just because
right.
that's how we are born and that's how we thrive. We thrive with the family we're born into, hopefully. We thrive or die, and then we thrive with our chosen family. Like this is how we coordinate, and this is how we activate empathy, understanding, companionship, all of that stuff. And if you dilute an identity so much that it loses its purpose, people just kind of drift away, right? We've watched this politically. Like I think the Democrats have by and large like drifted so far afield from their liberal positioning that they've lost whatever. I mean, it's really only been hundreds of thousands, but they've lost hundreds of thousands of supporters as people drift away because they're just like, oh, you're not the group you said you were anymore. And so national boundaries at least are a little more resolute in that they don't alter as much during our lifetime. So then we have something that we can kind of hang our hat on as a grouping identity, which we've talked about a lot, provides people a sense of safety. Which is why if you say their safety is threatened, they'll be like, "Oh, wait, what? What?" I mean, same thing with COVID, right? Shut the borders down. Don't let anyone in. Don't, you know? And at first, people were like, "Oh, Trump's a madman for not letting like Chinese people in or whatever. What a racist!" But then 2 months later, it was like, no one can come in my house if you don't put a mask on." So I was like, "Okay, so y'all went way past Trump, way past." So we all have this thing of like, it's the good and bad of having people you identify with. And our job is to, as much as possible, identify with everybody. But our job can't be, because we're not God as much as we think we are, we can't actually provide for everyone on an individual basis or even on a national basis. Um, Mostly in our national case because of ineptitude, not because of, I think, lack of, I don't think because of lack of will or lack of funds necessarily. Not that we're responsible for the whole world, but just even we're just responsible for everybody here. We're not doing that fantastic a job as it is. So then it's
Yeah.
like, if we don't have our shit together, can we really just keep taking, like, if you were a terrible foster parent of 4 kids, would it be cool for you to take in 4 more kids? You kind of be like, no, because then the 4 kids you're barely getting, like, taking genuine care of, you're probably going to take even worse care of, kind of idea. But again, maybe I'm not an economist, so maybe I'm shrinking it to over much into principle. But that's, I think, how I can kind of look at it in a way that's compassionate, but not as responsible for every single person as I am for those who I am distinctly responsible for, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, I agree with that last part, especially. It's just there's so much waste and inefficiency. There's so
Yeah.
much food waste, energy waste. And that's not even getting into my judgments about how people choose to use, various resources. That's just pure
Yes.
like what ends up in the landfill.
Yeah.
So
Just trash.
yeah, that's one of the things I do like about mutual aid. That I'm getting actually a little more back involved with it here in Chicago.
Nice.
Well, this was funny actually, as an anecdote, because I used to be really involved with mutual aid throughout, the pandemic, 2000, 2000, no, 2020 and 20.
2020. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
Jump 20 years. You're good.
I need some more coffee. Anywho, uh, I think I think every time I mention the pandemic, uh, at least you've trained me not to call it COVID, um, but even the pandemic is sort of it's like what do we want to call that period at this point?
Man, I mean, it's really, I don't think we resolved one as a culture. So it's hard. I feel like I always put quotes around the pandemic emergency, or I often just say lockdowns, etc. Because to me,
Right.
I always want to direct the attention towards, again,
Yeah, no, I've done that too.
the
Yeah.
inept and inefficient response.
Lockdowns are actually the
Yeah.
the thing we're really talking about in terms of what
Oh, yeah,
created a lot of outcomes.
a lot of times. Yeah.
Um, so anywho, was very involved in mutual aid, and there's a really robust food rescue program, and
That's
informally organized. It's not incorporated. It's not a nonprofit. It's just a bunch of volunteers organized on like WhatsApp and Slack, and they have
yeah.
warehouse space, and it's remarkable. And sometimes they actually attempt to quantify it, and it's
Yeah.
I'd say tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of pounds of food
Oh, so awesome.
and some of this is, I remember one thing was like a grocery store, their freezer went out, and the FDA regulates that if your freezer's out, I think at all, it was out for I think 3 minutes, which
Yeah.
I think any of us know isn't actually going to impact you. I've
No.
opened my freezer for 3 minutes before,
Oh, I've
uh,
definitely walked away. Yeah.
but they are regulated to throw it all out, and
Wow.
so there's so that alone, I mean, if that just existed everywhere, we would have a lot less waste.
Yeah.
And then the other part you mentioned that I thought was really that stuck out to me was about activating empathy, understanding, and companionship. And
Yeah.
it sounds like we both I basically subscribe to, well, I don't want to speak for you, but I subscribe to the idea that gosh, we ought to be able to do that with any human,
Yes.
any of God's children. That seems like a Christian value as well.
Well,
Uh,
God's children would only, in a Christian value, God's children would only be those who are redeemed by Christ. Everyone, the rest are referred to, we're all born children of wrath.
okay.
So,
Wrath's children. Thank you for
Wrath,
correcting.
yeah, wrath children. Doesn't that sound
Um,
cute?
it's like a band name.
It is, right?
So this is why I don't usually try to make Christian references because I understand.
No, it's good. Listen. Christians
Oh,
say
here
stuff
we
like
are
that
learning.
sometimes
We're
too.
learning in
That's that.
public.
There we
That's what
are.
that's what this
Yeah.
show's about. But in any case, the not only is that, I think, a noble, lofty goal, but
Yeah.
probably challenging for most of us to
Oh,
do
heck yeah.
with billions of people.
Yeah.
Um, but it's also demonstrably not the case. Uh, I would say the right or the left, but I'm picking on the left a little bit because they're the ones picking on Trump in this regard. And I don't remember the exact stat, but I know we've both seen
Mm,
stats about
yeah.
I think the last one I saw was 50% of young folks think that it would be okay to act violently to somebody on the other side. Um,
Yeah. Or that. Well, I think technically they asked, would violence be justified to achieve political goals?
okay.
Which I think, to be fair, I thought that would be 100%. I mean, violence eventually kind of probably has to be involved with every political movement that's ever happened. Um, the downside of that is that yeah, exactly, that violence would be justified based on political difference, which is where that could be carried to very quickly.
Got it. Well, thank
And
you for
that
that correction.
that's horrifying.
So yeah, I'm going to ponder that after the show. To what extent does nationalism actually help us empathize with a more realistic group of people?
Yeah.
Realistically, a realistic size group. Um,
Yeah. It's hard. It's hard. I mean, well, as you know, as an empath, and I know probably more as somebody who only recently discovered that there's a second definition of empathy, which is not to feel, because the I say the essential definition, especially as relates to being an empath, is to understand and feel someone else's feelings. There's a second definition of empathy, which is to sort of vicariously experience someone else's feelings through your understanding and sort of vicarious, like kind of imagination of them, which is kind of what acting is. Now, so in one case, you're sharing their actual feelings, like you are literally mind melded with Bob Dylan, and in the other one, you're Timothy Chalamet playing Bob Dylan. You know what I mean? So those are vastly different definitions, but those are both, to some degree, just based on our own sense of busyness and thanks to our little hand computers, harder and harder in some ways. The first one is extremely difficult anyway, to actually experience someone else's feelings like that. I think requires and a something that starts to approach the metaphysical. To just sort of understand and sort of imagine and put together a version that's somewhat realistic of someone else's feelings, I think is much easier. And again, acting is rooted in that in a lot of ways, playing characters, but those are still very difficult to bypass our own self-centeredness enough to go, well, wait a second, let me really push outside of myself. And I think the great thing is that is the, I hope, coordinate demand of all people, whether you're like deport them all or welcome them all in. That is what we're pushing towards. And hopefully we are disagreeing on how best to, out of experiencing those experiences with that person vicariously or magically almost, what do you do about it?
yeah. Well, I am going to pull Brendan here and say, look, damn it, that second definition of empath, let's stop adding definitions because that's just bullshit. Um,
Yeah. Well,
I
that's an empathy, technically. That's and so
oh
it's
empathy. Okay.
empathy, yes.
That is
But the
that
re
is that is
yes.
quite different than being an empath, which would be more. And then, but it's funny, and I wrote the forward to this book, "You Empath You," a few years
Yes.
ago, which is a collection of essays from written by empaths, all of whom are women. But
Hmm.
in that, it was also the first time the two editors who brought the project together wrote definitions of different kinds of empaths. It's actually the first time I've seen anybody
Oh,
to do that because I
yeah.
realized I know empaths who can actually read feelings like Deanna Troy.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not exactly like that. In
Yeah.
fact, I don't try that much because I realize it's probably a lot of guessing and projection. But I
Yeah.
feel other kinds of energies. Like I think that even one of them is like an
Hmm.
earth empath, and I'm like, yeah, I feel like I can actually talk to plants. Maybe I'm that one, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
But all of it is something that we are, and this I just want to say to anyone who does feel riled up about this, is I actually don't think that there is I don't think there's actually a lack of empathy pronounced across the spectrum, the political spectrum. I think, but I think people focus their empathy on different sets and groups of people, and I think that's what some people on the like radically progressive side don't comprehend because I don't think uh, people on the radically progressive side tend to function based on systematic thought quite as much as intuitive thought. So then they tend to look at people who have a system by which they ordinate whatever. JD Vance gotten some controversy for bringing this up, but I guess it's like a Catholic concept that you sort of you do love and you love everyone, but you love in spheres. Like you love in a sphere around you of your child and your wife, and then you love in the second sphere of your parents and your siblings, and then you love in the next sphere of your cousins and your and people who you collaborate with or whatever. You start, and then beyond that, then people in your neighborhood, and then beyond that, people are, and so there are actual like there are kind of constant boundaries by which we have to organize the way in which we empathize and love for people. And people make different priority lists. And it doesn't mean they're not empathic or they don't understand suffering, but they just, in some ways, that's the stay in Mexico thing, right? It's like, stay there, stop suffering, stop coming here, stop going through the Donbas Pass. Like it's treacherous, it's terrible, it's not worth it, don't do it. And so that doesn't mean like, oh my gosh, you're hateful. They have to escape their suffering. You're like, they're just going into more suffering. So I think in some ways we're all panicking on both sides of the aisle. NGOs are panicking. We're all kind of in a semi state of trying to manage our panic of like, how do we minimize suffering? And we're all going to have different ideas about that. And it doesn't mean we don't care about suffering. But I think actually most people, most even politicians, most politicians care very much about people's suffering. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And we shouldn't stop. We shouldn't become callous to other people's suffering, even if we like them or don't like them. They're inside our tribe or outside our tribe.
and
Um,
that's probably one of the most dangerous traps to fall into politically is we
yeah,
assume the other side actually doesn't care about people
yeah,
or their suffering.
yeah,
I know I get a comment for landing. It occurs to me one thing you're, I think, illustrating is the difference between loving someone, which is really quite specific and
yeah,
it takes, a lot of bandwidth from your heart, um, and the idea of living from love for everyone,
yeah.
the possibility, loving humanity itself, loving, the possibility of everyone you meet, having kindness, moving from love,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think that's like a nearly universally hoped for thing across all people. Like I wouldn't, and I think Trump is a pretty vainglorious, maybe narcissistic person, but I don't think he functions with no. I've seen plenty of evidence that he also has eyes and ears for other people's suffering and wants people to do better. I think the Make Great Again is about him getting congratulated for it, sure, but it's also literally about make things better. Like it just means make it better. And there was parts of it that used to be better. That's always the case. We always like try to maximize a new thing and forget an old thing. And then we have to remember the old thing and bring the old thing back up into the front, remembering traditional, whatever indigenous wisdom is the same instinct as MAGA. It's the same thing. We're good. Let's go back to something that worked that we've forgotten. And so that's a beautiful thing, I think, to kind of look around, and it helps me anyway, not villainize people who I disagree with, to go, okay. And listen, sometimes there's villains. I'm not saying there aren't people who are out fully to like weaponize whatever they can to cause harm. Those people exist and they are to be watched out for. And they might be a fatter percentage than you might think or I might think. However, at least in the beginning, until you can kind of start proving that, we can start to assume that everyone has at least that ideal that you were just talking about in common.
Yeah. Well, let's keep an eye on it. Clearly, this is just the beginning, and clearly there
Yeah.
will be a lot of suffering, however you want to quantify it.
The
And
tip, mate, may I say this is the tip of the iceberg?
ooh,
Dad joked it. Yeah.
well, I love you. So let's answer the question again.
Yes.
What was the question?
Should the United States
Should
let everyone in?
should the U.S. let everyone in? Yeah.
Yeah, and I will still have to stick with no.
I'm still a yes. Let's have a
Okay.
big party. We're gonna have decorations from every culture imaginable.
Oh my gosh, so many holidays, y'all. We might triple our holidays. This is exciting stuff.
Yeah, it's gonna break my holiday calendar.
Oh, it totally is.
Much love.
I love you.
Bye.